Hi. Welcome to Berg Mountain University and our course on Baroque literature and echoes of the Enlightenment. This session we cover the ninth literary figure in François-Marie Arouet, also known as Voltaire. Come along with us.
Ninth literary figure. A study with François Arouet, Voltaire. November 21, 1794 to May 30, 1778. In 1794, the Sun King, also known as the Great, Louis XIV ruled France, where born under Le Petit Enfant of Henry IV, François-Marie Arouet was a philosopher, historian, and writer of the French Enlightenment. Under Henry III, King of Lower Navarre, whose conversion to Catholicism came with the crown of France in 1593 and the Edict of Nantes in 1598. While granting certain freedoms and rights to Huguenots angered many in the predominantly Catholic country, which ultimately many would say motivated his assassin on the 14th of May. The issue is that there is a difference between the land and its people, where some unite their church with the state, and others don't, so as Henry III of France's assassination on the 2nd of August in 1589 came to pass, the state crowned Henry III of Lower Navarre as the fourth of France. The papacy of the church, however, crowned Charles X in opposition to Henry of Navarre, which was disputed until his death 9 months and 7 days after. The Pope's choice of king in Charles X had been since the 23rd of December in 1588 imprisoned by Henry III, nullifying his reign, and until his demise May 9 of 1590. The wars of religion to France played a heavy toll on the country, with the Eighth War of Religion beginning in 1585 and ending in 1589 with the Henry III assassination. As Henry IV and Charles X were crowned both King of France, the Ninth War of Religion in France began as sides were drawn between the Kingdom of France and papal authority. The empires of Anjou and Angevin, where its capital of Angers was so divided, Jes formed Ges, or Latin from Anglo. Considering reason more so than faith, François-Marie Arouet was baptized the day after he was born, and beginning his writing career with Oedipus. Despite legal issues and political controversy, his Baroque literature enlightened more than most.
François-Marie Arouet, baptized the day after his birth, was bound to the church, but becoming a man of letters he followed his godfather François de Chateauneuf's footsteps. Having written over 2,000 books or pamphlets and 20,000 letters, he may have trumped his predecessor. The power of Baroque literature is far from physical, as from John 1:1, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was God. Marie Marguerite Domard, Arouet's mother, was of the lowest rank within French nobility, which at the bottom of the top it gave him a unique perspective, complementing which his famous wit and writing style. From 9 years of age, for 7 years from 1704, Arouet studied Latin, rhetoric, and theology at the College Louis Le Grand, renamed from what Jesuits founded as the Collège de Clermont in the early half of the 1560s. The sire of Bourbon, Louis I, was the Count of Clermont, who became the first Duke of Bourbon and was then made Count of the larger La Marche. As Jesuits who taught there were expelled from most of Europe in 1759 by the Catholic Church, we can see his positions on freedom of religion and speech, calling for a separation of church and state. Though his father wished him a lawyer, Arouet preferred a literary profession, so when working as an assistant to a notary, he secretly engaged in poetry. When discovered, his father sent him to Caen, Normandy, to study law, where historical buildings constructed by William the Conqueror were in much better condition than today, and with William's resting place there now. The year of 1713, Arouet began a job as a secretary for his godfather's brother, the Marquis de Chateauneuf, France's new ambassador to the Netherlands. Falling into a scandalous affair at The Hague with a French Protestant refugee called Pimpette, when uncovered, Arouet, relieved of duty, saw his affair up in smoke, and he returned to Paris. Now, with love lost, his ideas couldn't be more clear.
The Comédie Française allowed Arouet's first play, the tragedy, Oedipe, to debut in November of 1718, only 7 months after his 11-month residency in the Bastille, for a verse in a satirical play criticizing the regent. Supporting a constitutional monarch where rights of subjects were protected, Arouet, after his time in the Bastille, preferred the nom de plume Voltaire, as he formally requested of Jean-Baptiste Rousseau in 1719 to call him M. de Voltaire. Though Arouet wrote under over 178 pens names, the last thing he wanted was to be mistaken for a contemporary Le Poet Roi, the Poet King. La Henriette imitated Virgil, and with translations in several languages celebrating Henry IV as hero of religious tolerance in his negotiation and enforcement of the Edict of Nantes. Without time to mention all his works, we'll highlight but a few in his literary career, like Miriam in 1724, which initially a flop, but revised was in September of 1725, Entertainment at the Wedding of Louis XV and Marie Leschinska. Taunted by Chevalier de Rohan Chabot about changing his name to Voltaire and roughed up as a result, challenging Rohan to a duel, he'd end up in the Bastille again in 1726 on April 17. He pled for and received exile in England, where he would compare England's constitutional monarchy with France's absolutism. After a quarter of a decade, he would return to Paris.
His admiration of English government, religion, and literature encouraged his 1734 Lettres philosophiques, but without royal censor, the book was banned, publicly burnt, and Voltaire was ousted from Paris yet again. Voltaire's magnum opus Candide ou l'Optimisme in 1759, a satire on the optimistic determinism of Leibniz, doubts if our world is the best of all possible worlds. In 1762 he began to challenge those persecuted's convictions by the state of which the Huguenot, Jean Calas fatally tortured in 1763 was unfortunately famously won. Arguing posthumously as a case of religious persecution in traits sur la tolérance, the Calas conviction was overturned in 1765. Another of his better-known works is Dictionnaire philosophique in 1764, where an anthology of articles on Christian history and dogma were published. In 1778 at 83, though an old man in dotage, Voltaire was accepted in La Loge de Neufsiers.
Blind faith for François-Marie Arouet came second to reason. Were baptized he could only push for tolerance, whereas his writing career began with Oedipus. Legal issues and political controversy perhaps motivated his Baroque literature. His courage will long be remembered.
That concludes all the information we have for you this time. Next session join us with our 10th figure as we cover a study with David Hume. We will see you then. Thank you for your time and consideration.